After my dad's funeral, I returned home to see my sister move in with her stuff. This house belongs to me now. All of Dad's property does. Get out. Couldn't help laughing because my dad. My name is Kinsley, and 2 days ago I buried the only person who ever truly had my back, my dad. I thought the worst part of my week would be watching his casket disappear into the ground. I was wrong. When I pulled into the driveway after the funeral, still wearing my black dress and clutching the folded flag from the service, I noticed a moving truck parked out front. For a second, I thought I had the wrong house. Then I saw her, Evelyn, my sister, the same sister who hadn't spoken to Dad in years, hauling boxes through the front door like she owned the place. Before I could even ask what she was doing, she turned, smirked, and said, "This house belongs to me now, all of Dad's property does. Get out." I couldn't help laughing because my dad had already told me this day might come. It's strange, really, how you can love someone so much and still see the storm brewing years in advance. My sister Evelyn and I grew up under the same roof in a small town in Oregon. We had the same parents, the same tiny bedrooms across the hall from each other, and the same golden retriever who used to steal socks from the laundry basket. But that's where the similarities ended. Evelyn was older by 4 years, and from the moment she could drive, she treated our family home like a prison she needed to escape. She was always chasing something: parties, boyfriends, bigger opportunities in the city. I was the opposite. I liked my routines, my friends from school, the safety of knowing Dad would be there when I came home. Mom died when I was 8, and everything shifted. Dad worked double shifts at the hardware store and still found time to help me with school projects. Evelyn, on the other hand, became a shadow slipping in and out of the house, barely speaking to either of us. By the time she was 18, she was gone for good, leaving only a scribbled note about finding her own path. For years, it was just me and Dad. We weren't rich, but he made life feel full: Sunday pancakes, evening walks, and the old leather recliner where we'd watch baseball together. He'd tell me stories about his younger days, how he'd built the porch with his own hands, how he planned to leave me the house one day. "This is your safe place, Kins," he'd say, resting a hand on my shoulder. "No one can take it from you." I believed him, but there was always this unspoken unless. Unless Evelyn came back. Unless she decided she was entitled to something she'd long abandoned. Dad never spoke badly about her, but I could see the worry etched into his face whenever her name came up. The last time Evelyn visited while Dad was alive was 5 years ago. She stayed for 2 hours, complained about the dated furniture, and left before dinner. That's the Evelyn I knew, someone who measured life by what she could take from it, not what she could give back. So, when I saw her in the doorway after Dad's funeral, smirking like the queen of some kingdom she'd never ruled, I wasn't surprised. Angry? Yes. Hurt? Definitely. But surprised? Not at all. What she didn't know, what made me want to laugh instead of scream, was that Dad had prepared for this. Months before his health started to fail, he'd taken me to meet a lawyer. I remember sitting in that office, the air smelling faintly of leather and old books, as Dad explained his wishes in crystal clear terms. The house, the savings, everything he owned would go to me. Still, seeing her there, already moving her life into mine, I knew this was just the beginning of a fight, and I was ready for it. Dad had always been the strongest man I knew, physically and otherwise. He could haul lumber across the yard without breaking a sweat, and he had this quiet resilience that made me believe nothing could shake him. That's why, when he first started coughing more than usual, I brushed it off as a stubborn cold. But the cough lingered, and then came the weight loss, the fatigue, the nights when I'd hear him pacing because sleep wouldn't come. The diagnosis hit like a wrecking ball: late-stage lung cancer. I sat beside him in the doctor's office, as the words rolled out, trying to catch them before they could sink in. He didn't smoke, not since before I was born, but the years working in dusty construction sites had done their damage. He took the news with the same calm he carried through everything. I did not. From that moment, my life became about making his easier. I rearranged my work schedule, used my vacation days, and eventually took unpaid leave. I drove him to treatments, sat in sterile waiting rooms, and learned to read every twitch of his face when the pain hit, when he was tired, when he was pretending to be fine. Evelyn called twice during those months, twice. The first time, she left a voicemail asking if Dad needed anything. The second, she sent a text. Hope things are okay. That was it. She didn't visit. She didn't ask about his treatment. She didn't hear the way he groaned when he tried to get out of bed or see the way his hands shook when he poured his coffee. There were quiet moments, though, ones I'll hold on to forever. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, the air thick with the smell of pine from the trees he'd planted decades ago. Sometimes we'd talk, sometimes we wouldn't. But one night, as the sun dipped below the hills, he turned to me and said, "Kins, I don't know how much time I have left, but I do know one thing. I want you to have this house. I built it for our family, and you're the only one who's treated it like home." That was the night he told me about the lawyer. About the will. About making sure there was no loophole Evelyn could use to take it from me. His voice was steady, but his eyes glistened. As the months passed, his world grew smaller. Doctor's visits. The bedroom. The porch when the weather was good. I learned to cook his favorite meals even when he barely touched them. I read to him when his eyes got too tired. And when the hospice nurse started coming, I knew we were at the final stretch. The morning he passed was quiet. The nurse was there, I was holding his hand, and the room was filled with that strange, heavy stillness that comes when a chapter closes. I thought the hardest part was over. I didn't know that the real fight, the one Dad had tried to prepare me for, was just beginning. The morning of Dad's funeral was gray. The kind of overcast that felt like the sky itself was mourning. I'd woken before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold, staring at the neatly folded black dress on the chair. There was a dull hum in my head, like my body already knew it had to move on autopilot to get through the day. The church was full. Neighbors, old friends, men Dad had worked with decades ago who showed up in worn jackets and calloused hands. They shared stories about him building their porches or fixing their leaky roofs for nothing more than a slice of pie. Listening to them made my chest ache with both pride and loss. Evelyn was there, of course, sitting in the second row on the opposite side of the aisle. She wore a sleek black coat, her hair pinned perfectly, as if this were some business meeting she had to endure. We didn't speak. Her eyes met mine once, cold and unreadable, before sliding away. The service passed in a blur, hymns, readings, the eulogy I somehow managed to give without falling apart. At the graveside, I stood with the folded American flag pressed to my chest, the smell of fresh earth filling the air as the casket was lowered. People hugged me, whispered "I'm so sorry," and drifted away until it was just me and the sound of shovels. By the time I left the cemetery, I was running on fumes. I just wanted to get home, kick off my heels, and sit in Dad's recliner with the photo album we'd started last year. The drive was quiet, the kind where the silence feels heavier than any words. That's why I noticed it immediately, the moving truck parked right in front of my driveway. For a split second, I thought maybe the driver was lost, but then I saw the back door of the truck open, boxes stacked high inside, and a familiar car parked next to it. My stomach tightened. I pulled up and got out, my heels crunching on the gravel. And there she was, Evelyn, striding out the front door of my house with a box in her arms, like she'd been living there for years. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She set the box down, brushed an imaginary speck of dust from her sleeve, and gave me that smirk I remembered from childhood, the one that said she'd already decided she was smarter, stronger, better. "This house belongs to me now," she said, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "All of Dad's property does. Get out." I stood there, still in my funeral dress, holding the flag from Dad's service. And for a moment, I felt like I'd stepped into some twisted dream. And then, despite the exhaustion, despite the grief, I laughed. Because my dad, oh, he'd seen this coming. And he'd made sure I was ready, because my dad had warned me this day might come. It was about 9 months ago, long before the word cancer entered our daily vocabulary. We were sitting in the living room on a rainy Saturday, Dad nursing a cup of tea while I balanced my laptop on my knees, half working, half watching the storm outside. "Kins," he said suddenly, his voice carrying that tone he used when something serious was about to follow. "We need to talk about the house," I frowned. "The house? Why?" I'm not planning on going anywhere soon," he interrupted with a small smile. But life's unpredictable. And your sister? Well, she's unpredictable too. That's when he told me about Evelyn's last visit years ago, how she'd made snide comments about selling this place for a decent price and upgrading to something in the city. I'd brushed off those comments at the time as typical Evelyn arrogance. But Dad hadn't. I've worked too hard on this place for it to end up in the hands of someone who doesn't care about it, he said, his gaze steady. And I know you do. So we're going to make sure it's protected. 2 days later, we were in the office of Harris, Cole, attorneys at law. The office smelled faintly of leather and lemon polish, the kind of place where secrets get turned into signatures on paper. Mr. Harris, a calm man with silver hair and a voice like a steady river, explained everything. The will, the transfer of property, the clauses that left no room for argument. Dad listened carefully, nodding, then signed every document with the same determined hand I'd seen build our porch and fix our fence. When we left, he put a hand on my shoulder. You're set, Kins. No one can touch this house, not Evelyn, not anyone. I didn't realize until that moment how much relief there was in hearing those words. It wasn't just about bricks and wood. It was about the life we'd built together. The memories carved into every corner. Fast forward to today, me standing in the driveway, watching Evelyn haul boxes into a home she thought she could just claim like a prize. She didn't know about the meetings with Mr. Harris. She didn't know about the envelope in my desk drawer labeled Will, Property Deed. And she definitely didn't know about the letter Dad had left me, sealed and waiting, in case she ever tried something like this. So I laughed not because it was funny, but because she had no idea how completely she'd already lost. Evelyn's smirk faltered. What's so amusing? She asked, her voice sharpening. I just shook my head. You'll find out soon enough. Inside, my grief and anger were still raw, but beneath them was a steel spine my dad had helped build. She could storm in with her boxes and her entitlement, but she was about to learn that not all battles are won with brute force. Some are won with foresight, and Dad had given me all the ammunition I needed. Evelyn had barely finished dragging in her last box when she turned toward me, arms crossed, eyes glinting with triumph. You might as well save yourself the trouble, Kinsley, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I've already spoken to a realtor friend. We can list the house next week. Split the profit 50-50. It's only fair. I blinked. Fair? My voice came out calm, almost too calm. You haven't lived here in over a decade, Evelyn. You didn't lift a finger to help Dad when he was sick, and now you think you can just waltz in and… Don't lecture me, she cut in sharply. You've always been Dad's little favorite. Well, newsflash. Favoritism doesn't change the law. As his eldest child, I'm entitled to half of everything. I almost pitied her in that moment. Almost. You're wrong, I said simply. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I walked past her, heels clicking on the hardwood, and pulled open the drawer of Dad's old desk. My fingers closed around the thick manila envelope marked Will, Property Deed. I turned back to face her, holding it up like a playing card I'd been saving for just the right moment. This, I said, my voice steady, is Dad's will. He left everything to me. The house, the land, the savings account, everything. Legally, you have no claim. Evelyn laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You forged that. Or you manipulated him when he was weak. I could have that thrown out in court in a second. Good luck with that, I replied, setting the envelope on the coffee table and sliding out the official copy with the embossed seal. Signed, dated, notarized 9 months before his diagnosis. Mr. Harris, our lawyer, can confirm every word. Her laughter died, replaced by a thin line of lips and a twitch in her jaw. This isn't over, she hissed. You're right, I said, leaning forward. It's not over until you're out of my house. Her face flushed a deep red. Your house? This is our childhood home. Our childhood home, I said quietly. That you abandoned when you turned 18. The same home you mocked for being outdated and worth more as a teardown. Dad built this place with his hands, Evelyn. You don't get to claim it now just because it's convenient. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Outside, I could see Mrs. Whitmore from next door slowing her walk to watch us through the window. Evelyn noticed too. Her voice dropped, her eyes darting nervously. "You always were dramatic," she muttered, grabbing a box off the floor. "I'll call my lawyer. We'll see what a judge thinks." "Please do," I said, folding my arms. "But while you're at it, remember that breaking and entering and attempting to seize property that doesn't belong to you are crimes. And I'd be happy to let the police sort that out." She froze, the box still in her hands. That was when I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the sealed letter Dad had left me. I didn't even have to open it. Just seeing his handwriting was enough to steady me. "Dad knew you'd try something like this," I said. "And he told me to tell you one thing. If Evelyn ever comes for the house, tell her she already gave it away when she walked out on us." Her grip on the box loosened. For the first time since I'd arrived, she looked unsure. "Get out, Evelyn," I said, my voice final. "Take your things and leave before I make that call." She didn't say another word. She just turned, stomped toward the door, and shoved past Mrs. Whitmore, who was now openly gawking on the porch. As the moving truck engine roared to life and disappeared down the street, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. But something told me deep down that this wouldn't be the last time she tried. I didn't see Evelyn for 3 days. That should have been a relief. But it wasn't. The absence felt like the eye of a hurricane calm, but only because the next wave hadn't hit yet. I kept the will and Dad's letter in the top drawer of my nightstand, checking it twice a day like it might magically disappear if I didn't. On the 4th day, I got the email, subject, formal notice of legal action. The attached PDF was from a law office I didn't recognize, full of stiff legal jargon about potential contestation of the last will and testament of Henry Miller. It ended with a line that was probably supposed to scare me. "Our client reserves the right to pursue full property rights and damages." I almost laughed. I forwarded it straight to Mr. Harris. 10 minutes later, he called. "Don't lose any sleep over this, Kinsley. It's a bluff. Your father's will is airtight, drafted when he was in perfect health, with witnesses, and filed properly. Any judge will toss this before it gets to court." Still, Evelyn wasn't the type to fold quietly. Sure enough, a week later she showed up again, this time without the moving truck, but with a fake smile plastered on her face. I watched her from the porch as she strolled up the walkway in designer sunglasses, holding a coffee cup like she was just here for a chat. "Kins," she started, her voice syrupy sweet. "I've been thinking, maybe we could come to some sort of arrangement. You know, for the sake of family." I didn't answer. She set the coffee down on the railing. "I could rent one of the rooms just temporary, until I get back on my feet. I'd pay, of course." My silence stretched long enough for her smile to falter. Then I said, "You had 15 years to be part of this family, Evelyn. You chose not to. You don't get to come back now because there's something in it for you." Her face hardened instantly. "You really think Dad would want us fighting like this?" "Yes," I said flatly, "if it meant protecting what mattered to him." For a second I thought she might drop the act and start yelling again, but instead she just scoffed and muttered something under her breath. Then she turned, muttering about how I'd regret this, and walked back to her car. I stayed on the porch until her taillights disappeared, the coffee she'd left growing cold beside me. Later that night, I sat at Dad's old desk, running my fingers over the wood grain he'd sanded smooth years ago. I pulled out the letter again and read his words. "Be strong, Kinsley. People will show you who they are when they think they can take from you. Protect this home and you'll be protecting me too." He was right. And Evelyn had shown me exactly who she was. 2 weeks later, I got the call from Mr. Harris. "She dropped it," he said without preamble. I blinked. What? Her lawyer officially withdrew any intent to contest the will. No explanation, just a formal notice. "That's it, you're in the clear." The relief came in a strange way. Not like a wave washing over me, but more like the slow release of a knot that had been pulled tight for months. Still, I didn't trust it. Evelyn didn't quit because she had a change of heart. She quit because something wasn't going her way. I found out what that was. 3 days later, a mutual acquaintance, Mrs. Whitmore, from next door, of course told me she'd overheard Evelyn at the grocery store, complaining that her investment deal had collapsed and she didn't have the money for a long court fight. Translation: she couldn't afford to keep coming after me. I should have felt triumphant, but mostly, I just felt tired. That weekend, I decided to take one last step. I went to the county records office and filed a no trespass order against her. The clerk, a gray-haired man who looked like he'd seen it all, didn't even blink when I explained why. Family disputes, he muttered, stamping the paperwork. Worst kind there is. On Monday, I changed the locks. It felt symbolic closing the door, literally and figuratively, on a chapter that had threatened to consume me. A few days later, Evelyn called. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me wanted to hear what she'd say now that the fight was over. Kinsley, she began, her tone flat. I heard you filed that order. That's right, I said. You didn't have to go that far. Yes, I did. There was a pause on the line, the kind that feels like someone's deciding whether to burn a bridge or try to mend it. Finally, she said, Fine, I won't bother you again. Then she hung up. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure, either. But it was something. That night, I sat in Dad's recliner, the house quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock. The tension that had been living in my shoulders for months was gone. I looked around at the home we'd built together, every photo on the mantel, every dent in the wood floor from years of life lived here, and felt something I hadn't in a long time: safety. Evelyn might try again someday. Or, she might not. Either way, I was ready. Dad had made sure of it, and this time, the front door was locked for good. A week after the last phone call with Evelyn, I woke up to the kind of morning Dad would have loved. The sun was pouring through the kitchen windows, and the air smelled faintly of pine from the backyard trees. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing myself for the next confrontation. I made coffee in the old percolator Dad had used every morning. The gentle gurgle of it brewing felt like a familiar heartbeat in the quiet house. I carried the mug to the porch and settled into the rocking chair he'd built back when I was a teenager. The garden needed work, winter had left it ragged, but even the weeds didn't bother me. This was still our home. Still standing. Still ours. I thought about the letter he'd left me, folded neatly in that envelope. I'd read it so many times I knew the words by heart, but I pulled it out anyway. Kinsley, it began in his steady handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I hope you know that I trust you not just with this house, but with our memories. You'll have to be strong, because there will always be people who think they can take what they didn't earn. But this home is more than wood and walls. It's you. It's us. Keep it safe. I folded it back carefully, holding it against my chest. It struck me then that this house wasn't just about ownership or property rights. It was about the life we'd built together. The Sunday pancakes. The porch talks at sunset. The quiet moments that didn't need words. Evelyn had wanted to turn it into cash. I wanted to keep it alive. Later that afternoon, I walked through each room, touching the walls like they were old friends. In the living room, the dent in the baseboard where I dropped a bookshelf when I was 15. In the kitchen, the cabinet Dad had fixed 3 times because I kept overstuffing it. In my bedroom, the window that rattled in the wind but somehow always made me feel safe. When I stepped back onto the porch, the sun was sinking low, bathing the house in gold. I sat in the rocking chair again, listening to the creak of the wood beneath me. I realized then that I wasn't just holding on to the house for me. I was holding it for Dad. For the promise I'd made. For the part of him that would always be here. In every corner and every creak of these old floors. The fight was over. The locks were changed. The will was safe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready not just to protect what I had, but to live in it fully. I rocked gently, watching the last light fade, and whispered, I kept it safe, Dad. Just like you asked. And in the quiet, I swear I could almost hear him say, That's my girl.